preservation of and increased access to the 92nd Street Y Humanities Audio Archives is generously funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Good evening, everyone. This is like school. I'm Joan Finkelstein. I'm the director here at the 92nd Street Y Harkness Dance Center, and it is such a pleasure to see so many of you here tonight for our Breaking Ground Wizards of the Dance on Film series. We have had a lecture series, or rather a dance discussion series, I should say, for about 7 years here now, here at the Y. Usually our format has been to have a dancer or choreographer interviewed by the wonderful Deborah Jowitt, who we are thrilled is still with us moderating our series. But this year, at the suggestion of Deirdre Towers, who I think is there somewhere in the audience of the Dance Films Association, we sought to do something different, and that was to take a dance film, a film made on the life and work of a great dancer or choreographer, and to show the film and have a discussion about the film. And so this is the second of our series, and it is Ann Vachon and Malachi Roth's film, Beyond Words, The Life of Jose Limón. We have many people to thank for supporting a series like this. Helene Geismar-Katz, the Associate Executive Director for Program here at the Y, and Deborah McGee, the Director of the Center for Adult Life and Learning, who have been very supportive of our having a forum for dancers and choreographers to talk about what they do in the art form that we all love. Deborah Jowitt, as you all know, is a dancer, a choreographer, a teacher, a writer, a historian, and has been all over, under, and through our field, and we are blessed to have her as a moderator. And with that, I would like to introduce Miss Deborah Jowitt.
I just want to tell you a little bit about how the evening's going to go. I'm very pleased to be here because I danced very briefly with Jose Limón when I was a member of Juilliard Dance Theater and was in the premiere of The Winged. And I'm not The Winged, Missa Brevis. I'm flying tonight. And I thought, I thought he was God at that point. And I've been hearing about Ann's desire to make this for quite a while and been in on some of the planning stages. So it's wonderful to be able to be here tonight with it. And I think you probably know, but I should tell you again, that this is a work in progress, that it is still, in Ann and Malachi Roth's view, not quite finished. They're still tinkering with it here and there. And when we have a discussion after the film, perhaps some of those feelings or issues can come up about the translation of dance into film, or video in this case. But we're also going to pass out, after we've shown the video, projected video, questionnaires that Ann has prepared while we're getting ready to set up for a discussion, and she'd very much like at some point, if you feel that you can, to fill those out. And somebody will take them at a table outside when we finished. So we're going to look at the video, and again, it is a video. It is being projected, but it is a video, and you have to remember that it was designed for a small screen, really, I think. And so you have to remember that some of the archival footage is going to look grainier than usual when it's blown up here. So we'll look at this very exciting piece, Beyond Words, The Life of Jose Limón. Then we will come up on stage, Carla Maxwell and Ann Vachon and I, and talk a little bit about it and get some questions from the audience about Limón or about making films about Limón. So enjoy it. We've just been told there might be some microphone level problems at the beginning, but we'll get them fixed if there are. So I'd like to introduce, for those of you that don't know, Ann Vachon, the producer and conceiver of this, Malachi Roth. Malachi Roth, the director. Carla Maxwell, the artistic director of the Jose Limón Company. So I'd like to talk a little among ourselves, and then we're going to throw the thing open to questions. But I think it would be good, Ann, if you could talk a little bit about how you got the idea for this and how you went about gathering the material.
Could I just ask something first? Have the questionnaires been passed out? Okay, great. This is such a terribly embarrassing story. It was time for me to take a leave. I teach at Temple University, and it was time for me to have a leave, and I had to think of a project that wouldn't take me too far away from my new marriage. Otherwise I would have gone to Japan. So somebody suggested, that there is no material for dance history people. Is this good, this distance? There's nothing good for people who are teaching dance history courses to use on Limon. Why didn't I do something? And I really thought that it would be a neat little one-semester leave project. Naive. So that was the beginning, and I got Malachi to help, who happens to be my son, to help make just a trailer, something to raise the money for it. The money, what was the first budget? 40,000? I don't know. And so we put together something, and I began slowly to find out how much I didn't know, so about making a film.
And you went to various archives like the dance collection of the New York Public Library. You came up with a lot of footage that's not commonly seen.
Right. The amount of footage was just kept appearing. New little tidbits kept surfacing. Mm-hmm. Norton Owen, of course, was tremendously helpful with that. But the library at Lincoln Center, the Library of Congress, the Jacobs Pillow archives, and then, little bits and pieces from some television archive, and then, of course, the stock footage is almost, I guess, entirely from the National Archives outside of Washington, D.C.
Malachi, you said something about the quality of some of the clips wasn't due simply to the old footage, but it had to do with the resolution.
Yeah, we edited at the lowest possible resolution because we needed space on the hard drives, so it's not meant to be screened at this low resolution, and the color problems and contrast and I just can't express how much how awful it looked to me. Because
like the crawling skin.
It's just as low as it gets, and obviously when we master it and we raise the money to master it, it'll look a lot different. Mm-hmm. Look like a normal film.
Carla, when you were dancing with Jose, were you aware of all the aspects of this history that have been brought out in the film?
No, I don't think any of us really knew anything about Jose's life until his autobiography was published this year. It was a big surprise to all of us. Of course, I knew dance history, yeah. It was a beautiful memoir. We knew the public history, the history of his company, and but not about him personally. He was very private, and what we knew of him was through his dances.
Mm-hmm. This Anne is also partly responsible for some of the initial stages of this book, which Jose began a memoir very late in his life when he and his wife were, I think he was already ill, and he wrote it on yellow paper, and he only got up into the 1940s. So Ann was one of the ones who found it in the library and began to transcribe it, which was a great help to Lynn Garofalo, who then edited it. So this unfinished memoir is now available, thanks to a lot of people.
So that's what we used when you hear a first-person voice and it isn't Jose's voice speaking. That is almost all material from his own autobiography.
And I think you said you hope at some point to get an actor of some stature to read that. I don't mean professional stature, I mean a powerful person to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the narration and the autobiography, it's all temporary, just to edit with.
It brings up some interesting problems about the whole translation of dance to film. It's very interesting to see some of those early video things, how those people were sort of grappling with the idea of how to translate dance. And there's so many different viewpoints that you can get directorially from home movies taken at Perry Mansfield by Portia Mansfield, out all those ones of Jose out in the field on his hands and knees were standard Portia Mansfield films, I think, where she you would have to dance and then she would run out of film, and it seemed very short time, and then you would have to stand there with the stickers pricking into you, and she would reload the camera with little students lugging big rolls of film up to her on a ladder. So you have that, and then you have those sort of adventurous kinescopes with swimming faces this close, and I just wondered if you must have looked at much footage, wanted to comment on how you coped with blending all those different styles.
It was interesting because what was shot for television was different from how dance is normally shot, which is just as a record. And they decided to shoot it more the way films are shot or television shows are shot, to have the dancers repeat takes and stage it for the camera. And so we, responded immediately to the television shows, which are not really accurate representations of the dance, but are, even though they lack the purity of dance on stage, they just create an integration that we felt was necessary for the audience to really be able to become engaged. Occasionally we had, just the solitary static camera, and you see how far that goes.
Carla, there's a lot of talking in here by past company members, and you must use them a little bit as a resource in reconstruction. Do you?
We do. We try to keep in contact with all of the people who have come through the company who have talent for directing, teaching, and we have great hopes for our present company as well, going into those roles. I think it's very important, and I don't know how many people know that neither the Humphrey Weidman nor the Limon techniques are codified. They weren't intentionally so, and it's made a problem, but it's also given a kind of energy and creativity then to the people working, that there are shared movement principles, but everyone's had to find their own way to communicate that, and I think that's partly what's kept a liveliness and a vitality. And we do share. It's always interesting to me to see what somebody else is going to do, directing a piece or teaching a class, and you think, oh yeah, I've been focusing on this other aspect too much, and I think it gives a freshness and a life.
They probably have some great outtakes too for people.
Do you know how many hours of outtakes we have?
Well, will you give them to the library so we'll all be able to see them?
We have about 40 hours, I think, of material, interviews. I mean, there's so many people we interviewed that don't even get into the film yet. No, don't even get into the film. And yes, they will all be given to the library at Lincoln Center. I will probably finally get to do some editing myself, just to trim them down and make them a little more digestible. And we've also been working on getting some of that transcribed, or at least summarized, so that will all be available.
I was thinking too that there are certain elements of this documentary that are unlike the traditional artist documentary of the past, which was to isolate the artist in terms of his or her sources within the field, influenced by Graham or influenced by Limon. And you've taken the approach of bringing in other events of cultural significance, the wars for the revolution in Mexico, the connection between the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings and the traitor. Was that a conscious decision to connect Limon to the events of the day in some way?
You're going to have to answer this one.
It was funny, before we discovered the autobiography, I was reading into the footage to a large degree, associating it with silent film acting and all types of influences of different art forms of the era, but didn't know if I would ever be able to how to work that in, if it was too audacious to write narration that would force that. And then we found the autobiography, and he himself doesn't seem to want to reveal a whole lot about the very personal stuff, and instead kind of links himself to history, and always seemed to want to bring dance back to its subject matter, which is life, and so that was kind of where that came from.
Yeah. It's interesting that he decided, in spite of the amazing reception given to him in Mexico, that he wanted to come back here, that he was part of this tradition of American modern dance. And of course, American modern dance at that time said that you are your roots, you bring your roots into your dance, but he didn't, whatever they would have offered him there, he didn't seem to want to stay.
One time he told us in rehearsal that he needed the lack of distraction here in New York, for a better way of saying it. Well, because he said he could go to a beautiful country and the climate would distract him, or there would be, places to go visit, but there was nothing to do but work here. and he needed that. He needed that to discipline himself. I don't know if it was true, if he was trying to make us laugh, but some part of that the energy of what was here.
Yeah. I think he came at a time when it was very hot to be in a city like New York with all its, heat and its traffic and its angularity and its percussiveness and that sort of thing. I think maybe we should ask the audience if they have questions. Yes.
I was wondering if any of you on the panel felt that there is an underlying political theme of Moors Pavon, because if you think about it, Moors Pavon is an oxymoron. Who are the Moors and what is a Pavon, and would a Moor actually be invited to do a Pavon? And that has always fascinated me.
Oh, that's pretty heady.
Yeah. Anybody want to answer that?
Yes. No, that's a great idea.
What?
What you just said. Well, an underlying theme for the whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as the question of whether a Moor would do a Pavon, I think perhaps Moor is kind of a loose concept. What a Moor actually is. We whether we think of the Moors in Spain, the Arab culture there, which was a very highly cultured society, or sometimes it's used to talk about Moroccans. And so I think a Moor, if you're thinking of a connection between a Moor and an African American in this country earlier, I think it's rather different. I think a Moor in 16th century Venice it would not be so odd to be doing a Pavon, but I'm not an expert on social history.
But on the other hand, it was the Moors Pavon that was invited to be performed at the White House, as you saw the picture with Johnson.
President Johnson.
And the occasion was a dinner in honor of the
King of Morocco.
King of Morocco, and the dancers were brought in. I mean, in a funny sense, you know, the dancers were brought in to entertain the King of Morocco, and they weren't fed dinner. Lucas remembers, you know, coming in and rehearsing, and the chandelier that they had to avoid and everything. And finally, after it was all over, the dancers got to eat. So, you know, there were sort of two sides to this high honor of performing at the White House and being the dancers that were brought in to entertain.
But it is, as you said, interesting as an underlying theme of unity and dissolution and struggle within a microcosm that, you know, eventually falls apart. Any other questions? Yes.
The question, I think, is for Carla Maxwell. And here.
I can repeat it. Let her say it and I'll repeat it.
The film presents Jose as a very sad, distraught, unhappy person. Do you agree with that? I don't know it.
The film presents Jose as a sad, distraught, unhappy person. Do you agree with that?
My experience with Jose was that I wouldn't use those words to describe him. I think he was a man possessed with a single vision, which was his life, which was dance. And we knew him to have a great appetite for life and have a great sense of humor, but his work and his life and dance were all inseparable. And I don't think there are people who are like that today. Many people in the dance field. I think that for me, I knew Jose only the last 7 years he was alive. So a great part of what this film deals with is, of course, I didn't know him as a child or in his early career. But my experience with him, he was a very inspiring person, because for me, because he was so single-minded, and he was a visionary. And I think people who are a visionary and have that extraordinary talent by nature are going to be alone in the world. And I don't mean in a bad way. They're separate. They're like creatures of the gods in a way. And I think when you're striving for that kind of expression and you have that vision, it really takes over. It separates you out from a 9-to-5. This wasn't a 9-to-5 job. So the kind of passion and commitment that he had, like Graham had, like Doris Humphrey had, that was a way of life. I think that for me, that was a very inspirational energy and person to be around. And no, I did not think of him as a sad, unhappy person. I thought of him as a very eloquent person, but he was private. We didn't know a lot about his life, except what he told us, you'll know me by dancing my dances. And so whatever he meant by that and whatever we got from that is what we learned. And it was quite interesting for me to read what there is of his autobiography, because for me, I think, personally, I think he transcended all of what he experienced as a child, because he made this beautiful work that lives today and that we're able to share. So it's a very different feeling.
Well, when you read some of his contemporaries who were closer to his own age when he began, you find that there's quite a lot of laughter. If you read Eleanor King's Transformation, she was in the Humphrey Weidman Company with him. There's stories of him being funny and telling jokes, and So I mean, I think it's true that the film, because of it showing him in those roles as we're going through his life, I think emphasizes the tortured aspect of him. And I think Carla's right that he had a mission and was not necessarily gloomy all the time, just very focused. Any other questions? Sir? Yes, in the back.
Just in terms of the making of the film, I was wondering what your purpose was in showing the really old, like showing many different versions at once. For instance, the Moors Pavane showed different as it was happening, and then to show maybe the winged, the old footage, and then the one from the recent performance. I just was wondering what was the idea behind that.
We forfeited conveying a lot of information, practical information through narration, and which would convey the scope of his career and the vastness of it, and so it was an attempt to use visual means to convey all of the times, even that he was just performed these just for television alone, let alone as many different companies that have repeated the pieces and performed the same pieces over the years. So it's so far an attempt to without interrupting the narrative flow with too much just practical information through narration, trying to just give a sense of the scope of his career, which we might have to go a bit further. We're thinking of actually including some clips of newspaper reviews and things that will also give a sense visually of how influential he was.
Yes, there was a question down here.
Yeah, I wonder about his relationship to his role as the ambassador of American culture. You touched upon it and had it in there, but it wasn't clear to me what was his inner life with respect to that role.
What was his inner life like in respect to his role as an ambassador of American culture?
We tried to say in the film that he was proud of it, that it was something that that he felt that that the fact that he had been chosen to represent American culture and that his art was being sent was something that was, very important to him.
Yes, over here.
Right at the beginning of the film, mentioned his name that he went to art school and then decided to give up art when he saw El Greco. And we don't really pursue that, but I was fascinated by that because if you look at many of the images from his dances, they look like they're from an El Greco painting.
I don't know.
So I thought it would be interesting to pursue that angle at least a little more.
I don't know if you could hear over here that this gentleman was interested to know that he had given up painting because El Greco was so good, and he sees El Greco images in his work, which might be pursued more. Did you want to say something?
No, my hand is...
There are two more things that we hope to include, and the first is his own paintings from his youth, which came in at a very late stage, so we still haven't shot them, and also art from the time that he refers to. We just haven't gotten to that.
Because he did say in his what he wrote for the book 7 Statements of Belief that Selma Jean Cohen edited, he mentioned that he was moved by certain kinds of artists, and they were the artists you might expect: Shakespeare, Michelangelo, El Greco, massive, powerful, luminous ideas. So he was aware, I think, of that influence in his life. Any other questions? Yes?
You're referring to the fact that you weren't unhappy with the resolution and certain things about the way that it looks now. I might have missed it before, but could you just talk about what type of format you eventually like it to be in, and what type of venue you might like it to be in?
Right. We, the new systems that you edit on, computer systems, it becomes all about memory. So we were working at the lowest possible resolution, which is just good enough that you can edit it without ever meaning to show it to anyone. And but in order to show it at a higher resolution, you'd have to master it, essentially, and that's the next stage. We now have to raise money. We'll probably hire an editor to come in for about a month and work on it, and then we'll go and we'll re-digitize everything at the highest possible resolution. So the masters of the interviews that we have look nothing like what you saw. They look quite good. Even the archival footage looks, a lot better. And when we're able to work on it, we'll be able to improve it, and the sound as well. So this is just a beginning stage. Once we go through all of this, then we'll be ready to output a copy that we can send to festivals. And when we send it to festivals, we'll see how it does and pursue distribution from there. Whether it be, more than likely, we'll try to get it broadcast on television.
I mean, it is a video, not a film, even though obviously we're seeing it projected here, so that its market would be whatever the market is for that. I mean, it's been very heartening to see the response to the Paul Taylor Dance Maker. I mean, I guess anything on dance getting nominated for an Academy Award is pretty good. But it's been playing at the Film Forum, which is nice, having a run. So.
And it will play here on May 10th.
That's right. Paul Taylor is coming to discuss it with Matthew Diamond on this very stage.
We don't know about Paul.
We don't know?
About Paul.
Yes. Is another question here?
Would you call that this is a rough cut, like in film terms? And if it's a rough cut, which rough cut, which number? And if you think that you just need a month to do like a final cut, is this like the last rough cut?
Gosh, who knows? It's actually the first rough cut.
Okay.
It's the first time we've shown it as a rough cut. Before this, we've only shown excerpts, and there are parts of it that seem tighter than other parts, but we hope that it only will take about a month worth of editing with an editor, but before that happens, we're going to go through a lot of trying to get feedback from various people, and we'll have another screening on May 11th at Anthology Film Archives, similar to this one. So we'll be kind of, tallying the feedback, and I'll probably be, incorporating that feedback on and off until we sit down for a concerted effort to. So this is my first time, so I don't.
It felt to me long. Of course, a lot of incredible, amazing stuff there. I'm very happy that that is low digitized. That means that it's going to look much better. I also know that the sound, like the music, sometimes going over the people talking.
Yeah.
I thought this is normally in film the last thing that you take care of. Then I'm sure that you guys are going to.
Let me just translate a little for the audience, because they might not all be hearing you. The questions was, well, what rough cut is this? How far along are you? And that she felt it's a little too long, and she was talking about various other aspects of it.
And perhaps the thing that struck me the most, now that I'm still digesting it, is that maybe I missed a little bit more of the dance. Like I see him close up, and I know that probably maybe you don't have the material from the past, but maybe you have more material from the company now that we can breathe it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's incredible in terms of the time and who he was with the political, or however you want to call it. But I felt like I danced Limon once, and I missed that air.
Mm-hmm.
She missed some of the space around it with so many close-ups. Are there any other questions? Yes.
I can't help but being impressed by the sense that this effort, this work in progress develops in you as filmmakers and all of us, a sense of being responsible for each other and responsive to each other in Jose's absence. A project like this, you mentioned a Taylor project. This project perhaps might not have been possible in Jose's lifetime. Nevertheless, we have it with us today. I wonder if you also feel as filmmakers perhaps an emerging sense of being responsible to some notion of Jose.
Do you feel?
As well as being responsible to us, and to your own sense of us, and your own sense of the community. But is the sense of Jose's presence and his participation, if you will, in this project, even today, is that something that emerges for you as filmmakers? In the sense that perhaps Paul Taylor's participation in that, Ghana, or Merce Cunningham's participation in L.A. Kaplan, or any number of living artists and living filmmakers might have collaborated.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you remember, Carla, that Jose used to say in rehearsals, when choreographing to Beethoven is when I most remember this, and he would get stuck and he would say, let's listen to what Mr. Beethoven would tell us to do. And yes, Malachi is always saying, giving me an argument for something that I think we should do a different way, and he says, but Jose would have wanted it this way. He never knew it well. You sort of knew him. Yes, I think we're making every attempt to have him be a participant. That we're doing that as to the extent that we're possible, having him respecting what we think his wishes would have been. Yes?
Yeah, I'm utterly possessed by the idea of trying to make him happy, trying to do exactly what he would want, and I know that's ridiculous, but I could even take all of the clips where he's talking about dance and transpose film into where he says dance, and I'm basically, these arguments I would use for her, I'd usually quote him, the quotes that we're using to argue why we should do something, so.
And
Definitely.
then I'd quote Doris Humphrey back, but that didn't wash.
But seems very much constructed around how he saw himself, I think. They're very sensitive to that. Maybe one more question, yes?
I wasn't sure, was he speaking in the film when it was in the first person, that was always him, or is it somebody else sometimes?
There was an actor reading from when it was from this memoir, but you did hear his real voice when you saw his real face.
Like on a television.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise it was someone else.
Yes. I think,
And did you find that confusing? Because one of our problems is, should we try to find an actor who could sound as much like his voice as possible, or would that only make it more confusing?
I think it would. Is there a way to separate, to let the audience know that they're hearing from his autobiography?
One of the big elements that hasn't really been attacked at all is the titling. We haven't really, I threw in a bunch of titles so that people wouldn't be aggravated, but we really haven't titled the dances, identified a lot of the dancers and dances, and that's something we can try doing, which is, have text that identifies autobiography,
or even,
reminds the viewer.
John Smith speaking for Jose Limón. I think we have been here for a good long evening. Thank you very much for coming, and thank all these people. Yes, and hand in your questionnaire. Yes. These people would very much appreciate your handing in the questionnaires.
Yes, and I think there's going to be a table out there that you can put the questionnaires on.
Thanks for listening. For more information on the 92nd Street Y, New York, and all of our programs, please visit us at 92ny.org.